Our collective wound is abandonment and unworthiness. Those two together activate fear, activate the amygdala, and can trigger us unknowingly. It pivots us into this direction of proving, defending, explaining.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Kerry Siggins, and I'm so glad you are here today. Today, my guest is Carrie Moore, who is the CEO and founder of Titan Edge Advisory, which is a trusted partner to fast-moving companies since 2016. Carrie is a Forbes Council recognized strategist, and she brings 20 years of experience in capital markets, corporate banking, financial services, and leadership. She's amazing. We have such a fantastic conversation about leadership and going through hard things and how it teaches you about yourself and helps you grow and expand. It's a beautiful conversation, and I know you are going to love it. So hang tight, and I will be right back with Carrie. All right, everyone. I am back with my guest, Carrie Moore, who is the CEO and founder of Titan Edge Advisory. I love to have another Carrie on the show. I'm so glad you were here today.
Yes, I'm going to be curious about this because I always joke with people. I'm a big fan of language and communication. I talk about expressions or words and I call them Carrieisms. And so I'm curious, Carrie, if you have any Carrieisms.
Oh, yes.
This will be Carrieism squared today.
Yes, I do have Carrieisms, and I'm sure my employees would tell you, like, she's got these, and either I love it or I roll my eyes at it. So Titan Edge, you started it almost a decade ago.
My 9-year anniversary was December 5th.
Yeah, congratulations. That's amazing. So what made you decide to get out of corporate America and jump into advising Fortune 500 companies?
I think anyone who's in stage 2 of their career, it's always the question, how long was it the burning secret that you were carrying? Probably for several years. I was an entrepreneur inside of corporate America, corporate banking and capital markets. As you and I were talking prior to the show starting, I'm a builder. I love being at the table with smart people who think big and want to create things that have impact, value, and return. I think when you're inside of that, evolving through that, you're always looking for the next thing. I have a pretty high tolerance for risk. So I was breaking things and building things inside the organization. I think you're always looking outside of the glass bowl and saying, what's it like on the other side? And I really just went through this evolution of, I thought, I really want to do more within the technology world. I was already sitting at the intersection of capital investments, commercial and large corporate clients, and helping to build financial infrastructure and move money around the world when fintech really started building out in 2013, 2014. And you started seeing the incubator models coming forward out on the West Coast. I used to live in the Bay Area for about 7 years. It got really tempting. And I thought, what would it be like to lean in that direction, take a leap, and see if I can build at the earliest stage with like-minded people? And my thought was, if it doesn't work out, I'm highly employable. We'll just go back to the fire. And here we are 9 years later, and I've had this fantastic experience to come through the beginning stages of financial services, fintech, and seeing other capital allocators, venture capital, private equity, family office, and then getting to have my own live experience of being a founder while I advise and help other founders do the same. So the reward, or I should say the ROI and psych pay, has been fantastic. So the leap I couldn't deny, and I did it, and here I am.
It's so interesting. We think about it and we have all this fear around, what am I going to do? And you have that plan B of, okay, I'm employable. If it doesn't work out, I am employed. I can go back to corporate America. I can always find a job. So many people just don't take that leap. So maybe talk a little bit about how you decided to overcome or lean into the fear of, I'm going out on my own and I'm starting something brand new. I've never been a founder before, and let's figure out how to make this work.
Yes, I think my instinctual mapping, my cognitive mapping, because I'm really comfortable with risk and I love to innovate. I like to create transformation. So I already had that 20-year muscle of doing that, being a part of new teams, new opportunities, being the entrepreneur inside of the corporate world, maybe that gave me a little bit of a false sense of confidence. You think about that sometimes as an entrepreneur, when you have the moments, you're like, what was I thinking? But I would say that leap of doing that, it was very much about I was looking at the runway and saying, what do I want the next 10, 15 years to be about in my career? And I was at a place that I had checked a lot of the boxes that I wanted to check in my career. It didn't mean that I had everything, but in the banking world, there are titles that you seek to achieve, there are committees you get on, and then you run verticals. And I ran a lot of verticals globally. And I was just super curious what it would mean to help the little guy. I had spent so much of my career in mid-market or large cap or in the global world. I'm also a legacy currency trader. I worked in the bond market. I worked for a European corporate. We raised capital all over the world. And so all of those big things, I knew how you could chunk them down and use them tactically and strategically. And I also believed that I was a good teacher. And so I thought, why not? Why not lean in at a time when transformation was happening in fintech? There was a pretty big brain drain going on at the time as I was leaving financial services 2015, 2016, when I departed and was leaning into this new area. So it was exciting. It was, what can this be? And everything was replicating. You might appreciate this coming from an engineering background. Everything was standing on the rails of the 20 years that I had been inside of. And it's like, oh my God, they're looking at all of these front end, back end connectivity. They're looking at products and services. And they're saying, how can we really digitize data, make it better, and create a stronger experience expertly or just bravely? I believed I had enough to get a seat at that table. And I dove in. And it was remarkable, I would say, in the technology world, especially on the West Coast and the Bay Area, even though I remained on the East Coast, when I started tapping into my network. I think you and I know your network is where your wealth is. I refer to that as relationship capital. And I had a lot of relationship capital in that direction. And I took my toolbox and I thought, I only know what I know. What I don't know, I expect to sit shoulder to shoulder next to. And why not swing for the fences like I have for 20 years? And so there you go.
I love that you said, I expect to sit at the table shoulder to shoulder. And I've been playing around a lot with this idea of healing wounds. And I think that humanity's collective wound is I am not enough. And I think it's that way for both men and women. And it manifests itself in different ways. For so long, I thought I had to earn my seat at a table. And I love how you just said, I expect to be there. And I've really been changing my mindset. Not even that I expect to be there. It's like, no, I'm building the table.
Building the table is gigantor.
Yeah, that's what's coming next for me in my evolution. I'm a little bit younger than you, but I'm still thinking about what is that next phase. I've been running Stone Age for almost 20 years and it'll be 19 years in January. And I am caring so much more about impact rather than competing, than winning, than the day-to-day operations of building a company. Now it's really, truly about impact. And so I'm thinking about not just like how do I earn a seat at the table or even just expect to be at the table, but how do I build the table? So I would love to just explore your mindset a little bit around it. Since you said I expected to be shoulder to shoulder at that table, was that something that you have always had, or did you have to overcome some of that self-doubt, those insecurities, that proving my worth to be at that table?
Yes, I loved your statement about the human wound. From my reading and experience, our collective wound is abandonment and unworthiness. Those two together activate fear, activate the amygdala, and can trigger us unknowingly. And you're right, it pivots us into this direction of proving, defending, explaining. And we have gender experiences around that without getting caught up in some of those mind traps
Yes.
that might be out there right now. We all collectively have that and we carry that. I had a added challenge as a kid, and I'm making an effort now to talk more about it. Back in 2018, I did this TEDx talk, and it was my braving moment where I came forward and talked about what it was like, and I am dyslexic. And so as a kid, when you learn how to read, write, initially in school, if you remember, you were reading out loud. The education framework that I was inside of, the teachers were like, okay, we have a page of writing, and each kid sitting in a desk is going to read 3 lines. And so it'd be 3 lines, 3 lines, 3 lines. Well, when I was a kid, we didn't even know the word dyslexic. I just knew that the words were moving and the letters were moving around. That sure didn't make sense. And growing up in an engineering technical family, fear of not being smart enough, fear of speaking out loud. And if you can imagine how quickly I was calculating 3 3 3 3 3 and to figure out when I would get to my 3 sentences and practicing it in my head. I say this to talk about the gift of what we think is a wound and how it becomes leverage. And obviously, I went through some experiences around that and had a fantastic educational teacher and a program that taught me to overcome those fears. And so, massive shout out to first and second grade teachers or our specialized sidebar teachers. She wasn't my main teacher, who helped kids get over challenges. And so I have that in my DNA as a background that you're like, oh, I used to be scared to say something out loud. And here I am now going around the world pitching capital. Imagine I was a currency trader and had 3 screens in front of me where $4 trillion is trading a day. And I'm calculating, when you're a currency trader, you do transactions pretty fast.
Yeah.
And so here I am adding and subtracting pretty quickly to buy and sell money for money. And again, I would say there must have been some natural element of me that was courageous. And I tapped into that. And I think it was just that inner model that I wanted to overcome. Maybe it wasn't so much not feeling I wasn't enough, although I'm sure fear was driving me. Fear had a voice. I think the key thing is to let fear get the vote. And so I moved forward, even though I was sweating it out. And eventually it became an advantage that I'm grateful for in terms of the speaking, getting a seat at the table. And I think it's just literally about the Michael Phelps blinders. Am I smart enough? Yes, I am. And affirming that and having an incredible network around you that helps you get there.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing. It's so interesting how we look at those things that were hard as children or teenagers or whenever, anytime that we deal with something hard that's in our life. And we look at it and we say, I'm so grateful for it. This helped me grow. This opened this door for me. This taught me about myself. And then as parents, right, we want to protect our children from that instead of just going, yeah, like you're going to have to figure this out. This is difficult. I love the framing of this because my 13-year-old son is going through some hard stuff right now. So he's just like, I don't feel good, mom. And I want to just fix it all for him. And I also realized that these are the things that are going to make him stronger. I had substance abuse issues in my 20s and I accidentally overdosed in 2006, which got me to where I am today. And when people say, don't you regret that? I say, no, I'm so incredibly grateful for it. What I learned through those years and what I learned from hitting rock bottom, there's no better life lesson for it. And even though it was the hardest period of my life and my overdose was my rock bottom, it was also the very best moment because it was the moment I decided to change my life and completely pivot.
I think it's also where you find your center of gravity. It's something that I talk about now in my business. We predominantly are B2B, but I selectively do executive advisory, and I have people on my team that do organizational coaching or individual coaching. And I talk about finding your center of gravity. And you're right, we have a path. It's like we're journeying in, even though we're always in. It just feels that way. We're removing the conditional layers and maybe a little bit of scar tissue. I love what you share because I think there's a statement that in times of crisis, that's when character is proven, not made. And I think that journey as we're coming through, the beauty of being young or when we're kids is we're so incredibly resilient. We only know what we know, and we haven't fixated as much on the external environment. And so we're still listening a little bit more to that inner voice,
Yes.
the inner model, which I truly believe is the soul. Soul is essence and being, and it's our core self. It's the everlasting self. And I think when we're in those really tough moments where we're sweating it out and we're reaching for the greater expression of ourselves, and there's nothing more human than that. We talk about the human wound, but the way that we are built and hardwired to connect and to reach and become more. These are the finest moments of that where we do, as you said, realize the obstacle is the way. I'll make sure this is super short for timing. The first opportunity that I had to speak, I was still on garden leave, which is a banking term, meaning I was paid not to work before I could do anything, talk to anyone. It's a very captive way that they protect whatever role you had in client relationships and things like that. I had an opportunity. A friend of mine in the Bay Area asked me to come out to Facebook headquarters and speak on a culture day where they were allowing Latina and Latino entrepreneurs speak. Without getting into it, I'm not Latina. I do live in Miami. And there were many things that I almost was like trying to cancel myself out. I'm like, what can I talk about? I can't talk about the bank. And they said, we want you to talk about you. I took the choice to talk about, as a kid, having a secret and learning how to be a fast counter that might have helped me be a better banker. I don't know. When I finished that talk, more than 20 people stood in line to talk to me, and every person had a speech communication story. And it blew me away. The tech gods are in the front row. We're in Facebook headquarters, in their culture room. There's 500 people in the room. Intel, you name it, they're all there. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm going to tell this story. Wow, did it really allow me to connect in a way? And it began to open up the door when we create these next level leadership opportunities in our life, whether it's career or otherwise. You realize authenticity is the most magnifying force that you can tap into as a leader.
And people can see that's what you want to do when you speak, where people can see themselves in your story, your experience, and find it to be activating to them. That's why
Yes.
I love to speak, is that I think that my words, both written and spoken, activate something in people. And yes, maybe people haven't had substance abuse issues, but they can certainly relate to not feeling enough, working to prove themselves, making bad choices, getting into the victim mentality. The message is what activates, and that's what brings us together. It's not that you look different than the Latinas in the room, but that's not what actually matters. What matters is that we are all dealing with our baggage, our trauma, our shortcomings, which turns out to be gifts, which we don't necessarily see that when we're young. And every single person in a room is dealing with the same thing. So when you can get on stage and you can connect in that way, and someone who might be very different from you on the outside says, you were my story. This is my story. This is how I felt. And it gives me hope that I too can go do these things with my life. That's the beauty of connecting and sharing in those stories. And I wish that we would all remember who we are, and that we are really all so similar, and that we are all one, and stop looking at what value am I going to bring here. They don't have the same experiences as me. And guess what? They do. And even if it wasn't dyslexia, I will guarantee you that there were hundreds more in that audience who dealt with something that was debilitating in their childhood that they could relate to, even if it wasn't, oh, I have dyslexia.
I agree completely. And it was amazing. This mom walked up to me and she said, my son is dyslexic. And she said he's 8 or 9, which is usually when they find it. It's a kind of like quiet thing that happens. You don't know what you know, so you don't know how to define it. It usually starts showing up in your grades and things like that. And she said, when you described how you counted and was trying to anticipate and be able to still be successful in the room, she said, I finally understood what my little guy is going through. I just think these are, again, not to stay on this topic, but I think it's just incredible moments when we never know what we share, the ripple effect that it has in the room. And I think it's powerful in terms of human connection.
Such an important leadership lesson. So one of the things that I want to talk to you about is alignment. And I think that goes very much into part of what we're talking about because alignment is so key. And so you do work with leaders with something called the alignment advantage. So can you talk a little bit about it and why you chose that word alignment and how do you really help leaders understand how their performance actually translates into the performance of their companies?
Yes. Alignment is, so we can get a little geeky. From an engineering perspective, you built something, right? Structure matters.
Yes.
And specificity matters. And so alignment means that. It also means, as a CEO, as I know as a CEO, what happens at the top, I like to call it the team of captains. So that horizontal alignment really matters and what can balance within the organization, even within ourselves, in terms of the human structure of how we show up. As first, we're just consciousness, and without getting too woo-woo about that, what we believe we are at an identity level, vision, mission, purpose, which I see purpose and mission differently, what we believe that we represent in transformation. This is all alignment, and it's helpful if you do it in the order and how the natural construction is designed. And when you apply that individually and you apply it across a team, it is transformative when you actually get into the middleware, which is usually where you're going to find your operating capital, your commercial value, where you're actually connecting externally to your customer client base. So alignment for me has like multifacets to it. But simplistically, when I first start working with leaders, I remind them the only relationship you can give anyone else is the relationship that you have with yourself.
Yeah.
And that's a scary premise.
Yeah.
Right? Because we live in an externalized world where sometimes there's a blurred line between perception and perspective, right? Perception is us. Perspective is, what we should be sharing with the world. There should be a filter between that, sometimes not. So when you start thinking about, wow, whatever is showing up in the field, whatever is happening in my 9 a.m. staff meeting or what's happening inside the team, it's a reflection of me. And I think that's the first place on alignment, which I look at as accountability. And I think that might be a shared Carrieism between us. Our vibration is our currency. Vibration is our truth. And again, I'll say it's our center of gravity and how we operate from a position of influence. And so influence is about being curious and inquiry as a leader versus being the storm that comes in the room, takes over, tells everybody what to do, answers the questions in 5 minutes, which is a very ego-based way of leading. I work a lot initially with leaders on building self IQ. I think that transforms an organization. I can blur you with stats at a financial balance sheet level. If you want to double EBITDA, if you want to see operational efficiencies, if you want to see margins grow, alignment is the driver, and it starts at the top.
Yes, I agree with you. People are afraid to go into themselves first for lots of reasons. It might feel selfish or it might feel scary. But in my experience, every time that I work on myself and truly work on myself to understanding so that I become a more self actualized human being, a more self actualized leader, my capacity to give to my employees, to my industry, to the world increases. Every time I stop and reflect and do that inner work, and I think a lot of people, they don't understand that. Like, why would I work on myself? Why would I take care of myself? I don't have time to do that. Or it's these other people's issues that are causing my problem, not me. And yes, when you go into yourself and you work on yourself, you truly do the work so that you are in alignment with, as you say, what your purpose is, what your mission is, how you're going to speak your truth. And you just are in such a better position to really, truly influence and impact the world around you. I think that for a lot of people, it's counterintuitive.
I think it's conditioned, right? I come from corporate banking. That's a lot of rah-rah, ego. We've had different chapters of that. I grew up in the era of where, quote, greed is good. I was highly competitive, tremendously evolved as a leader. Obviously, in my 20s, coming into this environment, I wanted to win. I was in an era where, not to say that I think it's any easier, but in my era, I'm sitting at the table where often I was the only female there. When I was a currency trader, I was the only female currency trader. There was one other bond trader on the floor that was a woman. Otherwise, you're in a very minority position at a gender level and pretty aggressive behaviors on the floor. And so there was a lot that didn't necessarily feel safe, but there I was believing that I really wanted to be a part of this capitalistic thing. And I think it comes to impact and purpose. I'm hardwired today that I want to be a part of a group of people that are creating economic freedom. And I think economic freedom is to the entrepreneur, to the business person, to the business owner. We are the lifeblood of the US economy. And so, what does it mean to really create commercial value and to understand when we create ecosystems around that to where we make it easier to exchange value and we stop operating from this zip code lottery mentality and begin to understand, even inside of our organizations, another element of alignment for me is making sure financial acumen is built. When people understand at an identity level, alignment, how they add the dollar sign to the balance sheet, you will naturally, without paying for development, training, anything, getting an MBA, you will see revenue pivot positively 10, 20, 30% just by giving someone an identity that they make a difference financially. It's powerful.
I agree. One last question before we end with my signature question. And this is philosophical and future casting, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. And so I'm curious your thoughts since we have a lot of alignment between the two of us. I think that as AI takes over and we do see mass job extinction, and I do think that will happen, there absolutely will be new jobs created, but what AI can do and what machines can do, it's going to obsolete the way that humans work. And so we are going to have to find a different way to build value. And we're not going to be exchanging my hour of time is worth $20 an hour. So we're going to have to really reimagine, I believe, how we create because everything is going to change. So I am curious your thoughts on this. Because you talk about the value that you bring, the value creation. And I know that you think a lot and do a lot of work on the leadership in the age of AI. 10, 15, 20 years from now, what do you think that this looks like?
AI has been around, LLMs, this concept of what's come forward has been around for more than 60 years. And so it's been here. It's designed as an extension of human beings' consciousness. We are the prototype. And so this concept of alignment, you have to remember, and we can even quote Steve Jobs, may he rest in peace. Technology is always intended to follow. And every time that technology ultimately experiences a correction, again, this is a full Steve Jobs quote, is when you think that technology is leading humanity. And so we have to not look at technology as the competitor or the enemy. You have to see it as an extension. And so for coming in my first career and how I've expanded on that in my second, it's about connectivity. It's about increasing that front end, back end, simplifying. And so first, if we see it as an extension of us, then it starts to soften the fear factor around workforce. We're in the middle of an industrial revolution, which is inclusive of workforce change. I start to soften the structure is where I first look at things. The investment is pretty equal right now. I don't have the data for this year at the end of year, but coming into 2025, it was projected by both Stanford and Harvard and a few other firms that we at aggregate would spend $250 million inside of AI development at an organizational level. I don't know how we've tracked to that, but I'm sure we have hit it. And then secondarily, we spend around $300 billion a year in development of people inside of corporate America. So we seem to be one for one on trying to determine where's all this going. And so I think it truly is your relationship and the transformation that you want to create. Do you see a friendly world or do you see a hostile world? Technology can be both.
Yeah.
And I think for people like you and me who are great builders, who understand how to take technical things and make them simple, then we're going to create a world where technology follows humanity, makes life easier, and optimizes it. That's where I'm putting my vote, my effort, and my time.
I love that. I totally agree with you. I think it's going to be hand in hand to partner with us. Things are just going to look so different. I believe in the human spirit and in our creativity to figure it out. It's going to be bumpy. Let's just face it. It's going to be bumpy while we figure out what it looks like. But yes, I agree. We're going to be living side by side with technology, and it is going to dramatically change how we work or how we define work. And I am incredibly excited to see how that transforms. I have progressed in my career and how much more I value my free time, my time to create, my time to think, my time to speak, to write, to do all of those things rather than just grind out 70 hours a week being a CEO. How much freer I feel and how much more creative I am and how much more fulfilled I am. And it's allowed me to get really clear on what my purpose is and what my mission is and what my impact is. I am excited for the rest of humanity to be able to maybe have some of that time too, to figure out, hey, maybe there is this different way to be rather than to just do. And that is going to create a whole different world. And I think that's what AI ultimately can do for us, what technology can do for us.
Human being, right? Human being versus doing.
Let's face it, though, the vast majority of workers are doing and not being.
For sure.
And making that switch to being is so incredibly expanding. Not everybody has the opportunity right now to, and I think that's what's exciting to me is if we use technology for good. That's what's possible.
Great to be a builder right now.
I'm glad I got to ask you that question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, last question before I ask how people can find you. So the name of this podcast is Reflect Forward. What does Reflect Forward mean to you?
I hear reflect forward, and that makes me feel aligned and what is passionate for me. The future is faster than you think. And what does it mean to be a futurist and to be building? That's an asymmetrical thing, right? It's about what's at the end on the other side of the bridge versus what happens on the bridge, what happens just taking that first step. And so I love the journey on that piece of it. So I feel like I'm highly reflective and how I build and I create and how I want to be able to influence a room of people to be inspired. Inspiration in Spiros, in Latin, that means divine breath. And so these kind of conversations are in Spiros, divine breath, right? We look up and we believe in something more. And of course, we have to reflect because we want to learn from what we've developed. And so that's what I hear there. It's also a daily mindset for me. I begin the day, I claim my wins, I claim them in advance. I definitely vision forward. End of day, I revise the day. I've learned because I had a pretty tough inner critic that still knows how to show up and crack a whip. And so taming that tiger means revising end of day to where I don't cycle into my sleep. A reflection that isn't going to serve me, serve my team, serve my clients.
What a beautiful answer. Thank you so much for sharing. So how can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can contact me through info@titanedgeadvisory.com. That's the best way.
Fantastic. And I'll include those both in the show notes. Kerry, this has been such a fantastic conversation. And I so appreciate you coming on the show today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Same to you. Have a fantastic 2026.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. All right, hang tight. I'll be right back. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that interview with the Carries. And be sure to go follow Kerry on LinkedIn. She posts all kinds of interesting things about leadership and fintech and all the great impact she's making in the world. With that, I will leave you to your day. And if you think someone could benefit from this episode, please feel free to share it with them. And if you like this podcast, please go to YouTube or your favorite podcast platform to subscribe to it. And please leave me a comment or a review and share it with a friend. It always helps with the algorithms. Thanks so much. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.